in now.
Thanks, Mabel. You can turn off the waiting room. All right. Hey, everyone. Please join me. We'd love to see you. Awesome. Amazing. All right, we're going to get the show on the road. So hello and welcome to our second information session on our Ignition Accelerator program. Great to see so many familiar faces and also some new ones as well. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm on today and the lands of which you're all dialing from, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here with us today. My name is Beck Pham and I'm the Launchpad Operations and Program Manager, and I'll be hosting the session today. With me today, I've also got my team, so Jamie and Jonathan, who are our entrepreneurs in residence. So they'll be the mentors, they'll be working very closely with the startups that get accepted into this program, as well as Mabel, our Community Operations Officer, who's online. And we've also invited a special guest. So we've got one of our alumni members from our last program from last year joining us today to share a bit about his experience of going through the accelerator and also where he's at today. So you also get an opportunity to ask him a lot of questions. So a couple of housekeeping things before we move forward. So, there's a small group of us, so we'd love for you to keep your cameras on and, make this as interactive as possible. There is a little bit we want to get through, so just throw any questions you have throughout the session into the chat and we'll pick them up as we go. Otherwise, there'll be heaps of time at the end for us to answer them as well. During the session, I'd appreciate it if you could keep yourself on mute unless you have a question that you really had to get off your chest. Just raise your hand and we'll get you off mute. All right, so I'm going to kick off by just doing a bit of an introduction to Launchpad. A quick introduction. Launchpad is a technology business incubator that's backed by Western Sydney University, and we've been established since 2015, so we've been around for quite some time. We have 2 incubator locations that we currently support in Warrington and Parramatta. Oh, it's going a bit too fast, Jamie. Sorry, can you just go back? Okay, cool, thanks. Yeah, and it's worth noting that we are open to the community. So we're actually one of the few university-backed incubators that's open to the public. So what that means is you don't necessarily need to be associated with the uni as a student, staff, or alumni to get involved with us. And our primary focus of Launchpad is really about driving the innovation ecosystem across Western Sydney and beyond. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of geography on where we're based. So we've got 11 campuses, 11 university campuses across New South Wales and also an international presence as well. Launchpad is currently based on the top left there in Warrington, in our green building out west, and also our new home in Parramatta Engineering Innovation Hub, which I'm in today. And we've also got a 3rd location opening up early next year. We've got also planned in the future a few other locations as well in Liverpool, Hawkesbury and the Western Sydney Aerotropolis. Next slide, please. Cool. So you're going to hear a lot about the Accelerator program today, but I thought it's worth kind of just touching on what we do as a whole. So there's really 4 key areas of focus for Launchpad. So we work in the university research and commercialization space. So that's really helping our researchers in the uni take their projects and turn it into something that's going to be applied in the real world. We've also starting to do a lot around the student entrepreneurship and training. So that's, our undergrads, postgrads, and researchers as well, helping them just develop those skills that they need to become work-ready graduates. The startup incubation and acceleration, which you'll hear a lot about today, we'll let Jamie touch on that later. And the other piece is also the SME industry innovation partnering. So Western Sydney is a has a really strong makeup of SMEs. So what we do with them is really just help them with coming up with new IP, and also help them think about using technology in their day-to-day to enhance their core business. So it's really the three things that we do is really around translation, commercialization, knowledge and skill building. So that's across the students as well as the founders that we work with, and also collaboration and transformation with our partners. So it's all about, combining all these things. It's all about building Western Sydney's innovation ecosystem, and underpinning all of that is about using applied learning and driving research collaboration. Next slide, please. A little bit of a glance of where we're at today. So Launchpad works closely with about 100 to 200 companies every year. Out of those companies, we've formed almost 300 new startups, and that's really generated a huge impact to the Western Sydney economy. So a big makeup of that is really around the jobs that we've created in that space, and these are not just your average jobs. These are actually technical jobs in spaces such as AI and machine learning, and it's really starting to shift the makeup of the Western Sydney job economy. Next slide. A glance at some of the industry and technology focused areas that we tend to work with. In the industry areas, we do a lot around the advanced manufacturing space. We also ran a prop tech accelerator a couple of years back with one of our partners, and drawing on the expertise from the university and the institutes that we work really closely with are some of the other areas such as health, gaming, sustainability, and cyber tech. And across the technology areas, we do anything from AI to additive manufacturing, data science. We also do a lot around the VR and AR space. We've actually just got one of our companies here in Parramatta. They've just raised $12 million, and they're building one of the largest VR community gaming games in the world. They're probably like one of the first 3 games you would see on Oculus. So those are just some of the areas, the industry and technology areas that we focus on. Next slide. So hopefully that gives you a sense of what we do here at Launchpad. More broadly, I'm now going to hand it over to Jamie to talk specifically about the Accelerator programs that you guys are interested in.
Thanks, Beck. Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us here today. My name is Jamie Pride, and I am one of the entrepreneurs in residence here at Launchpad, and I'm joined by one of my esteemed colleagues, Jonathon Wolfe, who I'll ask to introduce himself in a second. Just a little bit about me before we move on to our programs. I think one of the things that differentiates us, even if I do say so myself, is the quality of our staff here at Launchpad. And I guess my background is fairly diverse. I have founded 6 startups. 3 of them were questionably successes, and 3 of them were unquestionably failures. So I bring that kind of entrepreneurial scar tissue to the table, including an IPO. And also a pretty horrific financial loss, about $200 million. On top of that, I was the CEO of realestate.com.au. So I've got a particular interest in B2B and also consumer two-sided markets from a SaaS standpoint. And on top of that, I've worked in the venture capital industry where I raised and deployed 60 million, I guess. So my perspective is very much one of appreciating the plight of an entrepreneur, and hopefully bringing some of my learnings to the table around what we teach here, but also having a perspective on the customer in the corporate world, as well as what goes through the mind of a venture capitalist. Jonathon, before you get to your section, do you want to do a quick introduction? Or not? I think we lost.
Thanks, Jamie.
Okay.
I'm Jonathon Wolfe. I'm one of the entrepreneurs in residence, and will be working with the Ignition cohort very closely as one of the mentors, and delivering a lot of the program as well. And similar to Jamie, I'm an entrepreneur who's been involved in many different startups in many different industries, raised venture capital, bootstrapped those businesses, sold some of them, exited poorly in some, and also closed them down because they didn't have a purpose. So similar to Jamie, my 30 years of being a startup CEO has delivered a lot of insights and understanding about the journey and the successful mindset and capabilities that should be instilled in a successful entrepreneur. So that's what we're trying to impart with you. Aside from the hard work of being the entrepreneur and letting you understand how to do that well, there's a lot of 60, 70 years worth of experience in Jamie and I as startup CEOs, which we hope that you can benefit from and realistically not make the same sort of errors and mistakes that we did on our first, second, or third go.
And yeah, I don't know about this 70 years, mate. I'm much younger than what you're looking at.
If you add it up, mate.
If you add it up, yeah, we need about another 4 of us to get to that number. Anyway, so look, we are doing something a little bit differently with our programs this year in terms of how they're structured, but our purpose remains the same, which is very much focused on 3 things. I think one of the things that differentiates us is that we are very much focused and centered on the founder. And we believe that your startups may come and go, but you as a founder need to grow. So, ultimately 92% of startups fail within the first 3 years. However, we want to make sure that you as a founder keep coming back and getting stronger. So that's partly about developing your capability as a founder, but it's also about developing your mindset. So we'll talk a bit about that later, but we're very much focused on building founder resiliency and a high-performing mindset. We're also looking at, I think, a different approach to business where we want you to build sustainable businesses. And so whilst, we're very much, understanding of the venture capital and the funding community, this is a non-funding program. So we really only attract founders who want to legitimately accelerate their business rather than kind of getting some cheap cash. We believe that the best funding for your business is profit. Ultimately over time, you may need to take venture capital, but you want to take that on your own terms. And then lastly, I think our role in Western Sydney, but more broadly, is to make sure that we're helping you as founders to develop businesses that are impacting the broader community. And so we've got sort of this 3 pillared approach, which is really strongly around founder care, a rigorous approach to acceleration with some practical experience thrown in for good measure from myself and Jonathan. There are a couple of reasons why you should come to Launchpad, apart from the charm and amazement of myself and the whole crew here. As I sort of said at the outset, we're very much taking a holistic approach to acceleration. So if you're going to have a 25 to 30 year career as an entrepreneur, you need to build up the capability and the mindset needed to do that. So we do a dual acceleration. We definitely accelerate your business, but we're also looking at how do we grow your capability. We like to think that we sprinkle the course with a lot of practical experience. We think this is more science than art. And if you can learn from the mistakes that others have made before you, then it's going to increase your probability of success. And we think that there is a repeatable, scalable process for commercialization that we would hope to teach you. The program is completely part-time and it's designed for people who have a day job. So whilst there are a lot of hours and time associated with it, we make sure that our delivery is either at the ends of the day. So we'll do a breakfast session or an afternoon session, or we'll do a lunch and learn. And so we make sure that we can accommodate people who are working full time. And we do a lot of delivery online remotely. So the program is delivered from a lesson perspective entirely online. However, we meet as a cohort in Parramatta 3 times during the course of the program, so we can kind of bring people together. So we use this blended delivery approach so that people can be remote, do the weekly programs, but then also come in and meet people in our really amazing brand new space in Parramatta. We've got a lot of resources and technology available to us, including connections into the university, both on the research side as well the student side. And then from a facility standpoint, I've got to say it's probably second to none. So, our building in Parramatta has got some amazing maker spaces, prototyping. If you're a hardware startup, around sort of 3D printing, a bunch of capabilities. So a lot of facilities and community and connection over and above just the base programmatic delivery as well. So one of the things we love here at Launchpad is kitschy startup space analogies. And so we've restructured our programs this year, which we've been running for the past sort of 4 years, and we've segmented them predominantly into 3. So we've just finished delivery of our pre-accelerator program, which is called Pre-Flight, which is a 2-day intensive program that's done face-to-face in Parramatta, and we run that program twice a year. And then we run 2 marquee programs. So we run the Ignition program, which is a 12-week program that's focused on the startup phase of people's journey. So from idea through to minimum viable product. And then we've got our program that's called Booster, which is focused on scale-ups. So the latter half of people's startup journey. So for people and startups that have traction already, even if it's early traction, but you've got a product that's in market and now you're looking at sort of scaling that, beyond your first customer, that program is focused on those scale-ups. We think that's important because a lot of programs mix those stages together, and we feel that the needs of those founders and startups are different. So when you're in your early stage and you're very much about understanding, and getting towards product market fit, your needs are very different from somebody who's got a product in market and it's launching. And so by segmenting them, we're in a position where we can provide more targeted learning experiences. As I alluded to, the delivery pattern is pretty much along these lines. So we do a Monday afternoon session, which is a check-in and group mentoring, where we get people together and focus on the weekly area or topic. On Wednesday, we do primary curriculum delivery via a lunch and learn, which runs for about an hour. And then on Friday morning, we do a founder development breakfast. So that's very much focused on founder skill. And then throughout the week, we offer one-to-one mentoring, which is on request, both from us and then a panel of mentors that we have available. So if people want one-to-one time to focus on a specific issue, it's really valuable, but it's something that we try and provide some level of scarcity around because it's such a valuable resource. So that's on a request basis. And then we typically get together for 3 sessions, which is a monthly face-to-face activity where we typically bring in a guest, runs anywhere from sort of half a day plus a little bit more in Parramatta. And then we run a showcase where we kind of do a demo or a demo day, depending on the cohort, where we bring in the broader community, investors, and potentially partners. In terms of the core program detail, the pre-flight program we've spoken about, it's a pre-accelerator program, and it's really geared up for people who have an early stage idea but want to crystallize it and clarify it, or who want a taste of our overall approach to teaching entrepreneurship. The Ignition program, which is 12 weeks, it's about 60 hours of delivery over those 12 weeks. It runs from the 2nd of March through the 27th of May. And the admission criteria for that is either participation in the pre-flight program, or because most of you will have missed it, we're looking for somebody or companies with a defined idea. So a clarity around what you want to do, the area that you want to focus on, the problem that you want to solve. The program runs really in a series of loops. So we start, these are weekly. So in week 1, we're focusing very much around ad-lib value proposition statements and understanding the nature of failure. We then run a series of weeks where we focus on value proposition design, business model design, and then what we feel is the most important, which is problem validation. So how do you gather data to prove out your hypotheses, looking at sort of developing customer interviewing approaches. We then get out of the building in week 5, where we ask the startups to go and interview customers to gather that data. And we feel that that data-driven approach is really important. Then we come back in week 6 and synthesize the data, and then look at altering, what are the gaps in our data? What do we know? What don't we know? And then doing another series of customer interviews. We then do some work on prototyping over a couple of weeks, where we really encourage all founders to build on their prototyping capability. So looking at wireframing, clickable prototypes, so that by the end of the course, you've got a prototype that you can put in the hands of a software developer if you've got an MVP grant. We then do a series of solution validations and preparing to pitch. And then we do a final session, which is an introduction to software development. So what are your options as a founder? If you're a commercial founder, what's out there? We cover a little bit of information around low code, no code. And really where we're hoping for people to exit this program is really ready to start a minimum viable product build. Even if you've got a product, or you've got an MVP, you may still be suitable for the Ignition program. So sometimes we find that some people have gone ahead and built technology, but they don't have the foundation around a solid business model or value proposition, or they don't have the customer interviewing data in order to support the continued development or capital raising around that particular solution. And then the booster program, which runs later in the year, still runs for 12 weeks. Runs from August to October this year. The entry criteria is a little bit more stringent. We would expect people to have a minimum viable product because a lot of the work that we do in that program is hands-on. So we're looking at growth hacking, go-to-market strategies, pricing, capital raising, etc. So it's a little bit less formulaic. In this one, we're looking at a lot of the things around building effective go-to-market strategies, understanding channel strategies, pricing strategies, and metrics. We do some work on growth hacking and areas for sort of A/B testing and organic versus inorganic growth. We do some components around managing intellectual property, and some views on extending out and industrializing your product development approach. And then we do some human capital work. So looking at how do you lead as an entrepreneur, and how do you build a team? How do you work with the board? And then ultimately, raise capital and work with investors. The exit velocity for that particular program is different for each company, but it's really moving the needle on one of your key metrics. So attraction metric predominantly. So either moving the needle on customers, users, revenue. So ultimately, it's a true scale-up accelerator. The last thing we mentioned is we're very focused on founder wellness and well-being. So our model is very much around founders are working with scarcity. So typically we've got scarce energy, we've got scarce time, we've got scarce money. And so how do we manage that? So on Fridays, we run a program that's focused on personal development. So looking at developing a self-care mindset. How do you develop peer support? How do you manage energy? How do you manage your time? Important aspect is, how do you deal with rejection? And how do you sort of, manage your identity and how that works with a startup? How do you switch off? Developing a high performance mindset, dealing with stress, anxiety, conflict management. So we feel that's a really important part of the program in terms of creating a rounded founder that's, going to be more sustainable in the long term. So that was everything for me in terms of programs. I'm going to be around here to the end, so happy to take some questions. But at this stage, I'll hand it over to the wonderful Jonathon Wolfe, who will interview one of our amazing former founders. Dave. Jonathon, over to you.
Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate that. Dave, are you there? I think I can see you. There you are.
Yeah,
so,
can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. So what I'm going to ask you to do, Dave, is just maybe piece by piece, just firstly introduce yourself and then reflect on your experience of the various elements of the program. So the audience can hear from you as a customer, as the person that we do this all for, as to how did you take advantage of the opportunity to participate in the program? What was your experience? And then towards the end, we'll start to say, well, what was the actual impact on your business and on your reflections on the whole process as well. So maybe if you could just kick off with a little bit of an introduction about who you are and your business, what Cartersoft does, and you know, sort of the inspiration for that and who's involved.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So first and foremost, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And you know, Jonathan, you and Jamie have been great supporters of Cardasoft. So and Rebecca as well on the Launchpad. So very happy to be here. So I'm David Palacios. I'm one of the co-founders of Cardasoft. You can probably tell by my accent. I'm not originally from Australia, but I have lived there for close to 10 years now. And my background was I spent about a decade in enterprise technology. So I worked for companies like Workday and SAP, sort of leading large technology transformations as an account director, really, and then managed sales teams after that. And my experience was, you know, I've always sort of wanted to be an entrepreneur. I worked for different startups and different tech companies, and it was something that always really intrigued me. And I worked for great leaders and great founders. And then finally, I found my co-founder James, who I've known for a while, and we found this problem that existed within the world of software and digital mapping, and we said, why don't we give it a red hot go? And really, that's what sort of led me to the Launchpad. Was, you know, I've never started a business before. James had some experience, but I'm naturally a really inquisitive person, and I want to learn more, and I want to be challenged. And Launchpad was a great ground to do that and really sort of challenge James and I's thinking, challenge how we were building the company, get us really focused on, you know, testing and validating versus building, and really set forward a framework to help us actually scale the company. So that's really sort of what attracted me to Launchpad, and a bit about my background.
What is it, just for the audience, what does Palacios do? What is it that your company, what's the problem you're going after, and you know, what's happening with the solution? What does it do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I got so excited I forgot to tell everyone what Cardasoft actually does. So Cardasoft is a digital mapping platform. So we're democratizing mapping, making it easier for anyone within an organization to build maps that actually provide insights. And the problem that we're solving is, traditionally, if you go to any of these business to business organizations, there's usually specialist teams that build these digital maps, right? If you're looking at a COVID map or a bushfire map, and really with the technology that exists today, anyone within that business should be able to self-serve and build their own maps without requiring the need of going into these specialist teams and taking time to actually do that. So we like to call ourselves really the Canva for mapping. It's how do you simplify a mapping experience so that anyone can really build and self-service, just like Canva did that for design and publishing.
Okay, so perhaps you're starting to see some of the value of Launchpad in just what Dave said there is, you know, what we would try to help you distill down the value proposition of your business into something that's digestible for someone who has no idea what you do or why you're doing it. So falling in love with the problem, having a Canva for maps kind of, you know, key phrase that people can go, oh yeah, okay, I get it. You know, I understand in a very short space of time what these guys are doing. Each of you have that problem, because we find that entrepreneurs live in the weeds often, and they need to go and pitch, they need to sales, they need all of the skills that allows them to articulate what their business does and how they do it and what differentiates them and how they're going to do it sustainably. So part of that language that you've heard from James is Dave, is the result of drilling and pitching like you know, repeatedly to get the message right, and trying different pitches to see which one resonates with different audiences. So there's some sort of, it's nice to see some ongoing impact of what we did together for those many months.
Absolutely.
So Jamie outlined, I think, what are 4 key elements of the program, and I just wanted to sort of allow you to reflect on those 4 elements. And firstly, we focus on in the curriculum development, this sort of idea on Lunch and Learn is that we give you the tools and techniques to solve many of the issues that are related to the startup world. And there's the value proposition canvas, there's the lean canvas, there's, you know, prototyping. What was your experience of that sort of part of the program, and you know, what did you take away from it?
I think it was pivotal. I mean, really, you know, when we were out in the business, we had gone full time as of October 2020, and so I think Launchpad started maybe end of Feb 2021, and it gave us a real framework to actually think about a lot of the things that you mentioned, Jonathan, which was what's the actual value of the solution? What are the problems that we're solving? So in those initial sessions with Jamie around the lean canvas and the value proposition canvas really helped us synthesize and figure out what are we actually doing and how is our customer going to perceive this? And we still have them, right? I look at them periodically, probably once a quarter, to really think about, do these still hold true? The crazy thing is a lot of them still hold true. I mean, they've morphed and we've pivoted, but a lot of that we learned from those sessions and that structure is still true to this day. And I don't think if we wouldn't have put those structures in place, I think we would have gone out and probably built a bunch of stuff that really wasn't solving a core problem for the customer. And I think the fact that we took a little bit more time to think about that strategically using the lean canvas and the value proposition canvas was huge, because I think then it allowed us to actually structure tests to validate our thinking.
Yeah, and I think that you've hit on a key point in the purpose of those artifacts around the value proposition canvas and the lean canvas is to make sure that you have a framework by which you can go and test your assumptions against the market. So it divides your thinking and puts your focus on areas of how are you going to make money, what is your cost side, what is your unfair advantage, what is your unique selling proposition, what is the problem you're going after. And what we find, of course, is that many people have a direction and an idea and a North Star as to what they're trying to achieve. But when these artifacts, these canvases, as a way of teaching a method for distilling down those pieces that are so critical to startup success, and then providing you a mechanism and a framework to go and test those assumptions, and not rationalize your failures because you didn't do the work. That you've now got a very clear roadmap as to how you get from your good brand vision and your idea that is awesome to how are we trying to execute against that plan, and how would I do that? Because we know from our own experience and talking to many founders that often there's so much to do, and where do you start, and what do you do next, and what's the most important thing to do, and how do you actually build a momentum towards the challenges that you've got ahead of you. So the curriculum is designed to provide you a buffet of tool sets and techniques and capabilities that will allow you to make progress, reflect personally that, actually I'm making progress, I'm doing things that are relevant to understanding whether my startup is a business. And often at this stage where we're trying to work out a couple of fundamental things with these tool sets if you're coming into the Ignition program, is my problem a real problem for enough people that it will sustain the growth of a profitable business? Now, those things are not always obvious, right? You think, I've got a great idea, but will people pay enough for it repeatedly that you can build a reliable customer base that will support your salary and your rent and your marketing and all the things that go to run a business? And so what we're trying to help you at this early stage is just to validate that those assumptions are actually true and that you are building towards something that is actually of sustainable value to the world, and really valuing your time that you're putting into it, because startup founders are spending lots of their waking hours, and as Jamie said, we're designing this program so you can do it as a part-time when you've got another job where you're actually earning real money. This is building future value for you to step into the startup when it's ready. So the curriculum is a key part of paced learning and applied learning to allow you to move through that very quickly. And we just ran the pre-fright program the last couple of days, and the phrase that Jamie and I were using repeatedly through those 2 days is startups are valued by the velocity of their experiments. How many times can you run experiments? How efficiently can you run them? And how quickly can you run down your assumptions that underpin the business that you want to build? And that's what those tool sets and curriculum is about, is to helping you do that fast, do it efficiently, and do it in an objective way that allows you to stand back at the end of the week and go, hello, I did a lot of work and I knocked over 20 assumptions, and 12 of them were proven right, and 2 of them are invalidated, and the rest of them are a bit messy. So what am I going to do next week to sort of crystallize those uncertainties, and are those the ones that are actually important to the growth and development of my business idea? So that's what the curriculum does, is provides you all of that capability and tools and techniques, and they're well trusted, and Jamie and I use them every day. And we discussed earlier this week, I'm in the process of establishing 3 different startups, and so is Jamie. So it allows you to do this really efficiently and really effectively. So you're working with people who are living the same thing, living the same dream, and trying to establish businesses. And similar to Jamie, I'm on my 9th startup. So I love it. It's a great process, and it's really enjoyable to work with people like yourselves who have the ambition and the wherewithal, or the desire to become a successful entrepreneur. So
yeah, I think that's a really good point, Jonathan, as well. I think having yourself and Jamie in the sessions, I mean, you both are a wealth of information, right? And I think you look at other accelerators or type of organizations and different types of those type of accelerators, you're always paying for something, right? You're either going to give up equity or something like that. And here it's an awesome opportunity to get this wealth of information that both of you have, and you're able to really focus on building a business that's profitable, instead of giving, in a lot of these instances, large portions of your business for, like, I can vouch for the feedback and insights I've gotten from both of you. They're amazing, right? In other places, you might get that, you might not, but you're definitely going to pay for it for a chunk of your business. So I think that's an important thing about Launchpad, is just the amazing insights that both of you had. And like Jamie said, the scar tissue, right? Because I think you definitely learn more from the scars than when things go rosy.
So if you don't mind, Dave, Jamie talked about the critical aspect of the program, which is the mentoring, which is available as a one-on-one session on a weekly basis throughout the program. Specifically when you're dealing with issues that are not obvious, or you'd like to draw on our experience or understanding. But you had, if you don't mind, you had a particularly difficult issue that you worked through the last program. Do you want to spend just a little bit of time of talking about that?
Yeah, it was a interesting. I thought it happens only once in a while. It was a very unique issue, but the great thing is it's not, right. It happens quite often. We had a technical co-founder that didn't want to continue with the business, but he owned a substantial shareholding, so we needed to kind of work through how to exit him and how to be able to keep that shareholding within the company, because ultimately, it was substantial. It would really impact us from a fundraising perspective. And the great thing is, Jamie, superhero, came in 9th hour and really coached us as to what to do, how to manage a negotiation. And really the most helpful piece was just knowing that we weren't alone, right? That this happens quite often, that it's not something that happens to James and I because we're unlucky founders. It's a thing that happens in most startups, and it's how you persevere and you work through the negotiation to get a positive outcome for both parties. That was really helpful. And then on the other side as well, just being able to talk to the cohort, because even knowing within the cohort, and it happened to some of the cohort members, being able to talk to them and get advice, and even just a sounding board, because as you can imagine, right, you put your blood, sweat, and tears into something, and you don't earn any money, and then for it to potentially fall apart because of a mistake, we didn't have a shareholder agreement. Get a shareholder agreement. That's probably the number one learning lesson from this, is definitely get yourselves a shareholder agreement. It's tough, right? And it can cause a lot of personal, mental strain. But just knowing that you have this community of people that are supporting you and that want you to have a positive outcome from it and are willing to help you through that is massive.
Yeah, and that you touch on that really important aspect, that when we designed the program, we put you together with co-founders and other people that are going on the same journey. And often you find that they're completely different vertical, doing a completely different thing, but at the end of the day, they're facing many of the same issues that you are. So trying to build that community of founders for you to rely on beyond the program. So if you've got a co-founder, that's great. You might find a like-minded person or a bunch of people that you build friendships and the relationships with through the program. And I think, Dave, you're still in touch with many of the people that you're in the cohort who are still that, founding board for you as you develop.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have those founder sessions on Friday throughout the whole experience, and I still keep in contact with a lot of the cohort, and those are great sessions, right? Because I think a lot of times there's this whole aura about startups that it's always about success, always about the traction. You never want to talk about the bad stuff, and to have a place every Friday in the morning where you can just share, like, look, I'm a red today because this is happening and this crap's happening, and I'm beaten down. I've gotten 7 no's from investors, and being able to just open up and have a sounding board is massive as a founder. I mean, there was something that you talked about, Jamie, get mentally prepared for rejection. I mean, even just yesterday, right, I got, I think, 6 or 7 no's from VCs that we had reached out to. So that's a gut check, right? And to be able to have the mental tools to be able to kind of work through that and say, look, that's not me. That's just the reality of being in startups, is really, really helpful. And that's stuff that, we learn through the program.
Yeah, I was just reacting to one of the questions. Absolutely, this program is designed to assist you to build your purpose for your business. Now, often that involves technology and it involves innovation, but it doesn't mean it has to involve technology. So we're about helping you build your business for its purpose in the best way we can. We do find that most businesses that are startups by definition are susceptible to the application of technology to make them scale and be efficient. But that doesn't mean, that's not a sort of a threshold issue for us, if you like. So if your question is related to, because I'm not a tech startup, do I belong? Well, possibly. It doesn't mean you don't, but it's something that we would be looking at to how you're going to scale your business, because that's the idea for a startup. How are you going to scale it to solve the biggest problem you can go after? Often that involves some aspect of technology, either hardware or software or some widget that you want to build. That we're of course agnostic to that. So the last thing I wanted to touch on in a little bit more is that you've talked about this combination of all of these things. So you've got the curriculum, you've got the founder care, you've got the mentorship, and you've got the cohort. What was the impact of all that on you? You were involved in the program, you spent a lot of time. What's happened since you've left? Is it your escape velocity maintained, and where are you today?
Yeah, I think for us, it's there's something you mentioned, Jonathan, that's been that rings true, which is trying to ensure that you're focusing your time and effort on the things that are most important. I think it's I hear you say that all the time in my head. It's easy for a founder to get lost in a lot of different activities and different work, but I think it's important to really focus on the most meaningful work. And that's, where we are now is we're fundraising, right? We sort of said, instead of, our strategy was, instead of going out and getting smaller checks, let's get a chunk of capital so that we can actually execute. I mean, raising capital can be a really distracting thing. It takes a lot of time. And frankly, it's time away from your business, right? Which is, that's the lifeblood of any business, is the actual business. So our strategy has been, let's take this quarter to raise the funds that we need to raise so that we can spend the rest of the year actually executing what we've put forward in our 2022 business plan. So that's where we're at right now. I think it's definitely influenced by what we've learned from, Jamie and Jonathan around really, selecting the 3 top priorities and going after those. So for us, it's raising this capital so that we can go and execute our mission, hire the people and scale, run our tests that we want to run, and ultimately get to product market fit. So that's been our journey since, even during sort of Launchpad and since, is really bedding down this fundraising so that we can go and really build the company that James and I and our new co-founder want to build.
Yeah, Dave's moved himself to California to do that, so it's a big commitment in terms of the next stage of your business. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, you make a lot of sacrifices. So my wife probably isn't too happy because we found out before I left that she was pregnant, and we found out about a week or two ago that we're having twins.
Wow.
So yeah. So it's definitely a big sacrifice, but we're hoping that it's worth it. We're pretty close.
Okay, so obviously at this time, I don't want to open the floor to any questions that you have of Jamie or Dave or Rebecca, so you get a chance to make sure that you get the information you need as a result of this session. So thanks, Dave. That was awesome. I really appreciate you doing that, and I hope the others have found that interesting. I've learned a lot about what's happened to you, so that's great. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks for having me, and it's a pleasure. And yeah, if anybody on the call has any more questions or wants to connect, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to help any way I can.
Right. Thank you. So are there any questions? I'm sure there's lots going through your mind, but what would you like to know?
I think Shami,
that was a thank you wave, but actually I do want to say something anyway. So it actually helped with Dave's interview, because we have a problem. We're almost finished our MVP. We got an MVP grant, but it was the co-founder development side and the skills that we were actually wanting in the launch pad. So it made me feel a lot better that I'm not in the wrong stage. I didn't want to put, like, even though we've got it, I'd rather have the right tools and the extra knowledge before we go straight to market. The pressure that I've got is I actually have clients that are begging for the product now, and I'm dealing with developers, and we've bootstrapped a lot ourselves. And when we first started, we were looking at $300,000 for our product to be developed. We met Adeline Chu, who referred us to this program, and we're at the final stages actually of getting a front end MVP product to get out to our clients. But we want to learn from other people's mistakes. We want to make sure we have everything right, and it's very exciting. So that's why we wanted to participate in the program. I see everyone's individual, but this is my co-founder Paul, 50-50. We have our share agreement, don't worry. But yeah, so we'd like to do it together because we have different strengths and different things that we bring to a company together. And that's why I'm really excited to sort of sit in and make sure we won't, applying for something we've already done, but we want to make sure it's right, because, nothing's perfect, especially when you're doing something for the first time. So I appreciate it. It's made me feel a lot better.
I think that's one of the challenges we find for people that have built their tech already or nearly built their tech. You've spent a bunch of money. Maybe you've borrowed some money. Maybe you borrowed the money from your dad. There's the pressure to get to market and do all those sorts of things. So, but if you've got an open mind to actually go back and do some of that work that you may have sort of done, or you think you've done, or you're not comfortable you've done it all, well, it's never too late to go back and do that, because once you sink the cash into your MVP in a big way, well then you start to run down a raid that's been dictated by the cost of capital, which is not what you built the business to do, right? You've built the business for a purpose. It's not to serve your investors. It's to execute a purpose. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And if you're genuinely willing to kind of go back and revisit those assumptions and do the work, then sure, this is something that will be ideal for you, and you'll be very comfortable spending that check at the end, or not, right?
We've already half spent it. We've just done another.
Right.
We're doing it in increments, but compared to Paul's done a lot of the bootstrapping and the design side, so we've got it down to about 1/3 of what we were looking at originally. So we've done a lot of it that we can, and we don't have any investors. We have done it all ourselves. So I'm quite proud of that, because a lot of people want to take a chunk out of your company, as you were saying, Dave. So
yeah, they do.
There's a lot of things that we learn ourselves, but there's definitely other things that we, been sitting here in 3 years. So anyway, yes.
Good.
Excellent.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks so
Anyone
much.
else?
Hello.
Pravati's got a hand up. Yeah, hey, Pravati.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for such a beautiful presentation and giving that insight into this program. Myself, I'm Pravati, and my background is in the health background. So I'm starting, there's some startup thought about a health service, which is a bit innovative type. That's why I asked the question, is it a technology based? I got that answer, but I'm curious, because this will be a purpose based. services or purpose-based innovation. I just want to know whether this program is also helpful for like giving the support or ideas or mentorship that probably I would like to get. I would like to know.
Depends on the service. We'd need to know a little bit more about kind of what you're looking at doing, and we can kind of do that as part of the application process. I would say that everything that we do is universal in a sense that having a strong value proposition, having a strong business model, and our approach to validating your idea, whether or not you have good problem validation or solution validation, is universal to all businesses and all business categories. There are aspects of the program where we focus on software prototyping and a few other things that may not be relevant. But we're really geared up to look at accelerating high growth technology businesses. Like that's really where we are predominantly focused on. And a lot of the methods that we apply are focused on, high growth technology businesses. Jonathon, do you have any additional view?
Yeah, I just reiterate what I said before. I think it would be, if you've got a social enterprise or a purpose-driven organization or something like that, then we'd be looking to see, is that a valid problem? Are you solving it? And then how can we help you go after a bigger, well, in our language, market, but in the social problem that you're trying to solve? Are you ambitious enough to want to solve it at scale? And then, then that sort of drives you by default to some level of technology solution, because businesses that employ, I need another 50 people to do it in 50 locations is just ends up being a management problem, it becomes a different type of business and you lose the purpose. So a scalable business, a scalable organization that solves a big problem, that's what we're interested in. And if you think you've got a big problem that needs to be solved, well, wouldn't you want to scale it? It'd be my question to you. But as Jamie said, put yourself, if you think it's interesting, put yourself through the application process. It's easy to do. And we can have that detailed discussion with you once we have the detail and idea about what you want to do. And we'll tell you very quickly whether we think you should do this or, go do something else. But to give you the comfort, Jamie's involved in a lot of not-for-profit. I've founded and run charities. I've founded and run social enterprises. We understand that whole area of the world, and we have a lot of experience in that area as well.
Great, thank you so much. And one more thing I would like to link to that. So is all this program is practical based and applied approach, or just there is a theory and kind of university theories, the assignment and all this involved? So how is that program structured?
Yeah, so everything's practical, but it's not without homework, but the homework's on your business. Okay. So to give you an example, we expect people to complete a series of activities on their business, let's say a value proposition canvas or a lean canvas, for example, because by going through that process, it causes them to think about their business more rigorously. We want people to go and interview prospective customers about the problem, and we want them to design those interviews, record those interviews, and then develop and derive insights from those interviews. So it's very practical. It's an accelerator. It's not a course. So there are plenty of courses you can do on entrepreneurship. We're specifically an accelerator. The work we do is designed selfishly with an output in mind.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
No worries.
We have time for one more question if there is one.
Ritika.
Oh, you said my name perfectly.
No worries.
I wanted to know about trademarks and IPs, because I'm at the stage of, I've done some user testing and everything like that, but now that I've done it, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have taken it, because people could have, I've done it in a public space and people might have already seen that idea that I've put through, but it's not the full product. So I'm at that stage of, I'm telling people, like, it's my friends and family that are telling me it's a really good idea, but it's also the public. So it goes twofold. And what I'm worried about is, like, with the program, would I be able to say, hey, okay, I can get a trademark from it? And I, like, just to give you a bit of background, I've been in digital for over 13 years. I studied industrial design. I actually went to Western, but I'm no longer in that space. But I do want to use those types of facilities again to keep going.
Just quickly for you, Ritika, I'm one of my particular areas of expertise is in the commercialization of intellectual property and intellectual property strategy. So, you know, we can provide you sort of good advice about, you know, professionals you might need to find, or sort of the general experience that I've been through in that, you know, that challenging area of what you can do in the public space, grace periods on patents, trademarks, all of that sort of thing. We can provide you general advice, and also through the program, you've got access to the partners like patent attorneys and lawyers and stuff like that, that we can introduce you to, that should you need to do those sorts of levels of registration for your own, for a good business purpose, because you know, too many people we see go and lodge patents on a global scale, and suddenly they've got a contingent liability in their balance sheet of hundreds of thousands of dollars that they've got to support. We want to avoid that unless it's absolutely necessary.
Okay, perfect.
So I mean, you know, again, apply and we can talk about those things.
Yeah.
Okay. And sorry, just the second part, you don't need to be a local of Western Sydney, or do you need to?
No, you don't.
Okay.
No,
you don't.
All right.
You just need to be able to make it to Parramatta 3 times over 12 weeks.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Okay, perfect.
To our brand shiny spanking new building.
I've driven past, so I know what it looks like.
It's amazing. It's not full, it's empty at the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
So
absolutely.
I think it's Beck, you're just going to sort of round up, are you? And then we're going to stop on time.
I think we're about up there. If you have any other questions, I'll just drop my email. We'll send an email with our contact details as well, so you can follow up. But I just sent through the important dates into the chat again. So applications do close tomorrow, but for this group, we're doing a little bit of a special offer. You'll get till the end of the weekend to submit it through. We're doing interviews next week. So yeah, appreciate if you could get it in as soon as you can. Just
doesn't take very long.
It doesn't take long at all. Get it in. The program is free, but we do have a limited number of spots, so it's a competitive process. We're only taking 20. So yeah, make sure you put your application through, and yeah, hope to see your application come through.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye, guys. Good
Bye.
luck.
See you later.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.